let's talk about the discussion around Lincoln Riley and the punchline culture as it pertains to him. We landed on a lower third here of can Lincoln Riley hang? Lincoln Riley can't hang, kind of being the punchline culture around USC. Because I've heard a bunch of different things around him as a head coach. I've heard everything from he's not the right guy at USC to he doesn't have the chops to coach a place like that to he's overrated as a coach. So we just settled on the idea that Lincoln Riley overall can't hang when it comes to big-time college football. And I think some of that comes from his success at Oklahoma and then him getting to USC and not having that same caliber of success, making the college football playoff. I think there's also the idea that he's this quarterback guru. He specializes in just that side of the football, which he is a quarterback guru, but sometimes when you are so great with a certain position, people start to say, well, are you really a head coach? If you're so good at that one position, why don't you go be a coordinator somewhere else? And then you have on top of that the idea that USC was bad on defense the last couple of seasons outside of last year, and that in itself is true. And also his defense was bad at Oklahoma. So my take on this whole idea around Lincoln Riley and his chops as a head coach, are you sure this is actually what you believe? Or are you just kind of going with what's the fun thing to say in the moment, kind of just being a sheep? Because I think right now it's unpopular to say that Lincoln Riley is a good head coach in the world of college football. And that's just my feel on this. I don't know if that's how it actually is when it comes to different parts of the West Coast. Maybe some people are a little more positive on the Lincoln Riley front, but I think that's kind of how people feel based on what happened last year. But my rebuttal to that would be, well, you're saying they're a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team, right? It's probably the basis you're standing on to Lincoln Riley not being a great head coach in college football. Okay. Did you watch the games? Because you're pointing to the record, and that's all well and good, but did you watch the games? Because Lincoln Riley and USC, they did not compete like a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team. I mean, they played the runner-up in the Big Ten in Penn State to overtime, played the runner-up in the national championship in Notre Dame to a very close game for the majority of that thing. It was a game in the fourth quarter. Didn't look like a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team to me. So there's a difference between box score scouting and then actually watching the games themselves. If you watch the games themselves, is USC where they want to be yet? Absolutely not. Are they a finished product? No way. First year in the Big Ten, still acclimating, still doing some things they got to get right on that roster. But to say that USC is just a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team, I think you're trusting the record far more than the actual games themselves. And that's what I don't really appreciate when it comes to this idea that Lincoln Riley is not a great head coach or not a good enough head coach at USC. The other thing that people point to is, well, hey, JD, the defense sucked. Yeah, it used to. It used to suck. But you know why they don't suck anymore? Because Lincoln Riley went out and hired Dan Lynn, went out and hired Eric Henderson. He put together, I think, one of the best defensive staffs in all of college football. And so as much as you want to dunk on Lincoln Riley for his defense not being good in previous years, and you would be correct and very much so warranted in doing so, make sure you also give credit for him hiring a great defensive staff that drastically improved Lincoln Riley's defense a year ago. Like I think that deserves a lot of attention when it comes to how he's evolving as a head coach. That's the big thing, man. Great coaches, we'll talk about this throughout the course of this show, they evolve, they adapt, and they find a way to correct their mistakes and their blind spots. Now, you would have liked Lincoln Riley to do that a little bit quicker, but I do think now that the ability to still hire a staff that's as good as it is on defense for USC, there's one guy in charge of that, from what I can gather now. Now, I think the other maybe most valid pushback from people around Lincoln Riley is, well, JD, they lost a lot of these games in the fourth quarter. I did watch the games. I saw them lose in the fourth quarter. That kind of falls on coaching and culture, right? Yeah, it does, but just what we said, adapting is a big part of this. If people have been paying attention to how USC's put together their new staff out there in Los Angeles, they just hired a new strength coach. And talking to people close to USC, the reasoning behind that was to try and elevate culture, was to try and elevate accountability, things that ultimately make a big difference for you in the fourth quarter of football games. And head coaches, I would say, set the culture. Your strength staff, your strength head coach, they instill the culture. Like, you spend the most time as a college football player with your strength and conditioning staff throughout the course of an entire year. Like, that is who you are with essentially every single day throughout an entire year, not your college football season. And so I think at the very least now, Lincoln Riley seems to be adjusting a little bit more quickly, be a little bit more efficient in adapting. And I think as long as you're doing those right things, at a certain point in time, the right things keyword should, translate to the right results. And so the reason why I'm still believing in USC and believing in Lincoln Riley as a head coach is just what I said. All of the different blind spots that we've seen USC have to some degree, he is continuing to, at some way, shape, or form, at some pace, adjust and adapt to those. The roster needs to be better. Okay, USC goes out and has a killer, right now at least, 2026 recruiting class. Defense not good enough. Again, would have liked to see this move happen a little bit sooner, but now USC's got one of the best staffs in college football. Culture got to be better. Get a strength coach to help adjust that culture. Right things over an elongated period of time. I think those things are too solid right now at USC, and Lincoln Riley has put those things in place to where I trust the results to eventually find their way to Los Angeles. It may not be a Big Ten title this year. It may not be a college football playoff appearance this year, but at some point in time, you stack enough days, your head coach puts the right things in place, you get those results.